Good afternoon, everybody. Tracey Ingle of Ingle Law, where we are the probate puzzle people, all estate planning and elder law for today's modern families, smart, simple, and secure. It is good to see you here today. This is part 3 of our Facebook Live series on the nuts and bolts of MassHealth. Today, what I want to talk to you about is Medicaid for nursing home care. And we'll be talking tomorrow. I should tell you what we've already talked about. So the last couple of days, we talked about Medicare versus Medicaid. That was 2 days ago. That was part 1. Yesterday, we talked about Medicaid to help pay for home care, assisted living facilities, assisted living residences, and any services you might need at home. So that was part 2 on yesterday. And today we're talking about part 3, which is Medicaid to help pay for nursing home care. If you do want to get notification whenever we go live, whether it's this series or any other live presentations that I do, which I do Facebook Lives quite a bit, make sure that you like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Ingle, and then you will get notification whenever we schedule a Facebook Live presentation. So Medicaid for nursing home care, that is the most typical Medicaid that is applied for. Generally, it's when somebody does need to leave their home, they do need nursing level care in a nursing home, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay for it. And anything that I am sharing with you in this presentation, in any of the ones that we did the last couple of days, you can also download our nuts and bolts guide to MassHealth at masshealthguide.com. Everything that I'm talking about is in there, and that can be some valuable information for you to have in your hands, just to have it in the back of your mind, whether it's you, whether it's a loved one who might need this sort of support and you're trying to figure out how to pay for it. Nursing home care is hugely expensive. It's not unusual for nursing home care to run $14,000, $15,000 a month, and figuring out how to pay for that can be astronomically difficult. So really, Medicaid to help pay for nursing home care, Medicaid is a need-based program, right? We talked about that 2 days ago, Medicare versus Medicaid. Medicare is an entitlement program. You're just covered because you've paid into the system. Medicaid is a need-based program, so you have to meet the definition of need in order for that benefit to kick in and for your care to be paid for. So in this case, there's really two big prong test. The first is you have to actually medically need the care that a nursing home is going to provide. Now, I don't know anybody who wants to move to a nursing home just because, so I think most everybody is going to fit that test, but it's important to understand that there is this medical need component. And then the second test is financial, and there's 2 parts to that. The first is assets, and the second is income. So assets, we talked about a single person, we talked about this yesterday during the home care and assisted living, that assets, the person who is applying cannot have more than $2,000 of countable assets. So then the question is, of course, what's countable? And under the rules, everything is countable with the exception of the things that aren't counted. And the things that aren't counted, if for a single individual in very limited circumstances, the home, extremely, extremely limited circumstances, more often than not, the home will be countable. But a prepaid burial and funeral is a non-countable asset. You can set $1,500 aside into what's called a burial account to help pay for the things you can't prepay for. That also is non-countable. Your personal belongings, all the things that you can touch, feel, grab, hold, squeeze, those are non-countable. But basically anything that could be sold, liquidated, turned into cash, cashed in, that's all going to be considered countable. And you can't have more than $2,000 if you're a single person and be eligible for Medicaid. Now, of course, the question is always, how do you go from where you are now to $2,000? And most nursing homes will, let you believe that you need to spend all your money with them. And that certainly is an option. And sometimes it's a great option, but it's not the only option. And in the MassHealth guide that you can download, you will see in there lots of options for planning ahead and lots of options for salvaging if it's the last minute. Someone needs nursing home care starting tomorrow. There was no plan for this. There are ways that assets can be salvaged in the last minute, or at least used to the benefit of the family. So there may not be assets left for someone to inherit, but at least we can make sure that the money is spent in a way so that children or other family members aren't having to dig into their own pockets. So that MassHealth guide, you can download that and see those options there. But yeah, that $2,000 limit can be tricky. It can be really tricky. Now, if this is a married couple, so one spouse needs nursing home care and there's a spouse who's still at home, that changes the asset picture somewhat. Because if there is a spouse who's living at home, now the home is a non-countable asset. The home is protected so long as the equity is below $893,000. That's one of those numbers that changes from year to year. But so long as that equity is low enough, then the home is non-countable. And again, the other assets that are non-countable, the prepaid burial and funeral for both spouses, the $1,500 burial account for both spouses, and personal belongings. And also the spouse at home can have a car. You can have one automobile. So the spouse at home is also allowed to have up to $128,640. All right. So it's a fairly small number if that spouse is going to need to live off that for the rest of his or her life. But that is the cap. Now, the different thing about this program versus Medicaid to help pay for home services or assisted living, like we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about the spouse at home has to stay below that $128,640 for as long as the other spouse is still on benefit. For nursing home care benefits, though, once the spouse who's in the nursing home has applied and has been approved, then they become separate entities financially, and the spouse at home no longer has to stay below that $128,640 asset cap. So the assets can grow again, which can be hugely useful for the spouse at home. Income is separate. So for a married couple, the spouse's income is not, it's always considered separately. So the spouse at home is always going to keep his or her income. The spouse in the nursing home is expected to use his or her income to pay for care. Again, there are some exceptions to this depending on how much income the spouse at home has. Is it enough? There's a formula that's based purely on shelter costs that we use to determine if the spouse at home has enough income. And trust me, your definition of enough and what this equation spits out as enough, there's no relationship between those two, even though the word enough is used in both situations. So, but the spouse at home is never expected to use his or her income to pay for the care of the spouse who's in the nursing home. So that's key to understand. And also there's no cap on this income. So the spouse at home can have as much income as exists, and that's fine. It's never expected to be used to pay for the unwell spouse who's in the nursing home. So that opens up a huge salvaging option for us, where a married couple finds themselves one person needing nursing home care, and how is the other spouse at home going to manage and going to get by? And what that huge opportunity is we can take those assets that they can't keep, right? So if you have a married couple, they have too much in assets, but the thought of spending it all down in leaving the spouses at home with just $128,640, that can be a little terrifying. That is not a lot of money to look at and say, okay, this is what I have for the rest of my life, when the rest of your life could be 10, 15, 20 years. So what the rules provide for, though, the Medicaid rules and regulations provide for, is they say that you can take these assets that you have that are too much, and you can convert them into an income stream for the spouse who's at home. And that's basically what that is purchasing an annuity. I'm not a financial person. I don't sell product. I don't make money off the sale of product. I just know that this is what the rules provide for. And converting assets and investments into an annuity allows my client to actually keep the assets in the long term. I'm not going to go into all the details of the annuity here. The rules are very specific on the type of annuity, what's the term, all of that good stuff. What I really like about this annuity as a tool, though, is that the spouse who's at home gets to get their money back, right? They get to retain these assets long term, which is great. The other thing I love about this is you do it in the moment. It's nothing you have to do planning ahead. There's no 5-year look back issue to purchasing an annuity. It's a great in the moment tool to make sure we can salvage assets for the spouse who's still at home. Right now, for a single individual, that's not an option. We don't have a spouse who's still at home. So for a single individual, when you look at that MassHealth guide, definitely take a look at the pooled trust option under the salvaging techniques section. That is a great tool. Again, it doesn't have to be done ahead of time. It's not a planning situation. It can be done in the moment. And it's a way for us to take assets that this person has that's too much and set them aside into a very specific kind of a trust called a pooled trust. Now the person qualifies for Medicaid, and Medicaid will start paying for nursing home care. And those assets that we've set aside can be used to supplement that care with whatever Medicaid might not pay for, right? Clothes, sometimes replacing dentures, hearing aids, things like that. Any specialty equipment that may just make this person's quality of life better, like a recliner that raises up. So it's easier to get in and out of a chair, specialty wheelchair, motorized wheelchair, things like that. Those are things that Medicaid are not going to pay for. Certainly they're not going to pay for subscriptions or haircuts or clothes or cable television or the cell phone bill or whatever it might be. The pooled trust funds can be used, though, to pay for those things. All right. And there's a number of reasons why this works. Again, I'm not going to get super bogged down in a lot of the regulations, but it's a great tool to make sure that this person's money is being used for the things that they need, and family members aren't having to dip into their own pockets to pay for these things. So, mom or dad or Aunt Susie is paying their own way through this lifetime using their assets to do it. So that's another great resource for folks when they find themselves needing nursing home care. So that's kind of I've hit the highlights. I've basically taken a year-long course in Medicaid and boiled it down into now 3 Facebook Live presentations for you. I will be talking more about this in December. On December 9th at noon, I'm going to be doing a live webinar on all things having to do with the nuts and bolts of Medicaid. So it will be all of the things that I've been talking about in these Facebook Lives, going into them in a lot more detail. And you can certainly go to masshealthwebinar.com and get more information there about that webinar. And I will, like I said, it will be live. I will also be taking questions, talking through examples, showing how different things play out, and answering a lot of the frequently asked questions that I get. There is a lot of misinformation out there about Medicaid. I hear it all the time, that people heard from, a friend's sister whose mother went through, and they were told they had to spend everything, or this one lost the house, or, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. I really want to combat that. So definitely join me on December 9th at noon for our webinar on the nuts and bolts of MassHealth. You can go to masshealthwebinar.com to get more information. Again, I am Tracey Ingle, the principal of Ingle Law, where we are the probate puzzle people, and we work with all of today's modern families on all things having to do with estate planning and elder law in a way that is smart, simple, and secure. It's great talking with you again today. And tomorrow, part 4, we're going to wrap it all up. We're going to talk a little about the MassHealth application process and what to do once you get either a denial or an approval. And we'll talk about that tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.